Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Um, I click over to the chat, and the first thing I see is Kara saying, "No question tonight. Couldn't think of a sensible one." Well, there's lots of people that don't let that stop them. So keep that in mind for next time. Um, Hi, everybody. Glad you could join me. Glad you could join all of us. Glad we could be here together once again on this Friday night. And as always, I will be starting by answering questions that were submitted ahead of time by Patreon patrons and channel members. So even though I did not put a pinned message in the chat this time to that effect, I will just remind everybody, as I always do, if you are watching us live and you have something for me in the live chat, whether it's just a question or a comment you want me to respond to, or especially if you were planning on being generous and throwing in a super chat or something, please, if at all possible, hold that until after I get through the patron and member questions, and then I will be able to spend my full attention uh, with the live chat, and then it'll be less likely that I'll miss something. So anyway, um, oh, and that's good. That is good news, geek. That's really good news. Um, Marlo 221 says, I won't be here to hear any answer to this question, but I'll still put it out there. More MacGyver episodes, please. There are definitely more coming. I'll be doing. I'm not stopping the MacGyver videos. I do wish those videos got more views than they did, but I love making the MacGyver videos, so I will be making more of those in the future for sure. Anyway, let's start off with the patron and member questions, shall we? And the first one comes from Matt L, who says, I just rewatched Ant-Man 3 on Disney Plus. Gotta say, I love Jonathan Majors as Kang. He has such a presence that in some ways is better than Thanos. Kang's tone and delivery are top notch. What did you think? Assuming the actor isn't a piece of shit abuser, as has been alleged, I'm excited for him to be the next main threat. He almost has a cold and calculated persona like Shinzon from Nemesis. The echo over the voice speech from Nemesis gets me every time. Majors also has such range, from zany insanity to utter brutality and indifference. 10 out of 10 for me, at least. Side note, torn between watching The Flash in theaters or not for an Ezra-sized reason. Thoughts? Well, yeah, I mean, everything I say about Jonathan Majors has to be said with the caveat of, on the assumption that the allegations made against him are true, he's a piece of shit and fuck him. Um, but if I can comment exclusively on his acting performances, yeah, he's a terrific actor, and I thought he was good in Quantum Mania. I n- didn't really blow me away. It wasn't like a revelatory. Oh my god, this is an incredible performance, an incredible character. Jason and I talked about it a few weeks ago, not in our most recent um, late seating, but because we for the late seating podcast we do a section at the beginning and also a section at the end, that if you just listen to the audio podcast that is released to the public, you don't get to hear. It's called Late Seating Uncut. It's kind of bonus material for the patrons um, of the Let Me Listen podcasts that Jason makes. And on the uncut section of not our most recent episode, but our next most recent episode, we talked a little bit about Ant-Man and the Wasp and Kang. And I don't know. I mean, there's just something about Kang as a character that hasn't really popped for me yet. I don't think he's bad. I don't think there's anything like, other than Jonathan Majors potentially being a huge liability to the franchise because he's an abusive asshole in real life, where they may be forced to recast the character, and that may be something that they should do. But just in terms of the character, and the performance, like nothing on screen that they should be worried about or embarrassed about, but no, it just doesn't reach out and grab me. It just doesn't. The best moment he has for me in Ant-Man 3 is during one of the flashbacks with Michelle Pfeiffer's character, where she has just discovered who he is. Like she's just touched his ship that is linked with his mind. So she is able to sort of get like a rush of his thoughts. And she realizes for the first time, like who he is, that he is Kang the Conqueror and he's the super bad guy. And there's a moment that passes between them where he realizes that she knows now. He realizes that she has seen who he truly is, and he just doesn't react at all. He acts as though she hasn't seen what she's seen, and he just says to her, "We can go whenever you're ready." And there's something about that that really works for me, that is just kind of chilling in, like, yeah, okay, you know what I've done. You know what kind of a megalomaniacal, universe destroying monster I am, but we can go whenever you're ready. Like that, as though it doesn't even matter, you know? There's something about that that really works for me. And if the character was able to project like a sense of very, very low key, casual danger and menace like that more often, I think he might work better for me. But um, yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily the fault of the actor or the character is written. It's the fact that like we're following up we're following up Thanos with another really, really heavy, super serious character that I don't know. It just there's always going to be a comparison between Thanos and whoever the next big bad is, and it feels like they're not really doing themselves any favors by following up Thanos with another character who, though there are certainly some differences, feels a lot like Thanos. You know what I mean? Like he's a very serious, heavy character, doesn't really have any sense of humor to him, doesn't really have any energy to him, is supposed to be like this super scary, intimidating guy. Um, and it just, I don't know. He hasn't done it for me yet. And I mean, you know, comparing him to Shinzon might not be the best the best move for me either. Like again, because I like Tom Hardy's great. Tom Hardy's great as Shinzon, and Tom Hardy does everything he can possibly do to breathe life into that character. But the problem is, as written, that character is nothing. Like it's nothing on the page. And everything about Shinzon that is even remotely memorable or watchable to me is because Tom Hardy is working his ass off to make that character into something that it's not. But I'm glad you've enjoyed it. And as for seeing The Flash in theaters, I was never planning on seeing it in theaters. The fact that Ezra Miller has all of these issues certainly didn't help. Didn't make me want to see it in theaters anymore, but I was never that interested in seeing it in theaters. And after I saw some of the previews for it, that don't look bad. Like I'm not assuming that it's a bad movie, and the reviews for it have been pretty good so far. So I'm not expecting it like to be a shitty movie, but doesn't look like anything I need to rush out and see. I can wait for it to come out on Max. Some random geek who will always have 24K in credit card debt. That's the power of positive thinking. Duly noted everyone's concerns for my financial health. As Kane and others said, secure your own oxygen mask first before helping others. Because I am that weird person who always overthinks everything, when will I be sure I financially secured my own oxygen mask? When I have no credit card at all? That won't happen. Even if I never give money to my friends in need, I have reckless spending habits. Spend over $2,000 just on Fortnite skins in the past year. Besides, I have already accepted I will have massive credit card debt. What chances are there to not have massive credit card debt in this economy? I also have accepted that I will never own a home. Only 15% of millennials will own a home in this economy. Retirement plan. My retirement plan is communism or death. That is my plan to get rid of my credit card debt too, communism. And if I don't have some credit card debt or be willing to charge the cards, I won't be able to help my friends. Remember, capitalism must end. I mean, like I've said before, it's up to you. I would just say, as I think I told you last time, it's not necessarily me trying to give you financial advice. It's more me just saying, it's okay to think of yourself, and it's okay to to look at your if you ever get to a point where you look at your financial situation and you are alarmed, or you feel limited by it, or sort of weighed down by it, and you think, oh Jesus, I need to change something about this, and you find yourself unable to be as generous to your friends as you used to be. That's I'm and not that it matters what I think, not that it matters what anybody else thinks, but um I am sitting here saying that's okay. Like, if you are in a situation where you need to stop helping your friends pay their bills because you are so far in debt that you need to start looking after yourself more, that's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a bad friend. It would be nice if it would be really nice if our friends, if we lived in a world where our friends didn't have these debts and we didn't have to pay for the things that people need to pay for in order to survive. It would be nice if basic needs were just sort of part of the deal, and they were just the floor that we were all standing on, and everything built up from there. Maybe someday we'll have that kind of a society, but I wouldn't expect it anytime soon. Um, and in the meantime, yeah, it would be nice if we could all afford to help our friends out. But we can't all do that. And if you don't have the money, you don't have the money. And if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. And if you're in too much credit card debt, you're in too much credit card debt, whatever you decide that line is. And it's perfectly fine to say, you know what? I can't do it. I'm tapped out. I would love to be able to keep helping you. If money was in, if I had access to infinite resources, I would share as much with you as I possibly could, and everybody would be taken care of. But that's not the situation, and I need to take care of myself. And I'm just saying, if you ever find yourself in that situation, I think for my 2 cents, it's okay for you to say that. And of course, you care about these people and you want to help them, and I'm sure you'll feel bad and you'll feel guilty, but I mean, you have to look after yourself. You have to look after yourself. I mean, do you feel guilty because you spend $2,000 on video game shit that you don't need? I mean, you could be spending that 2,000 on your friends. And I'm not trying to make you feel guilty by saying that. I'm just saying you already seem to make financial choices that benefit you, or improve your quality of life, that don't directly benefit your friends in need. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where you need to see after your financial needs, and you need to tell your friends, I'm sorry, I can't afford it anymore, that's okay. Like, that's okay. So anyway, stepping down off the soapbox now. But yeah, for me, it wasn't so much about, giving you financial advice as it was just telling you, like, it's okay to look after yourself. Oasis, Steve, as I write this, it is Wednesday during Trek Reluctantly. I don't want to share this then, as that will kill the vibe, but I just read an article about how a woman who had epilepsy had her condition improved with a brain implant. Then it was taken out against her will. How in the boop is that not against the Hippocratic Oath? A true indictment against our healthcare system. I really just want to ask those involved, in the words of the doctor, don't you have any ethical standards? I read the article, and I read a couple other articles actually about the same case. And that seems like a tough case. I mean, the woman in question received that implant as part of a medical trial. It was an experimental thing. So I am sure that somewhere in the presumably many documents she signed, there was a provision that allowed the company to remove it. That they basically consented to the company removing the implant whenever they decided it was time to take it out. So even though, she says it was taken out against my will, and even though I'm reading about her condition and the degree of epilepsy that she lives with, I mean, it sounds like it made a huge difference in her life, and I'm sure it was a great hardship for her to have it removed, and I feel really bad for her. But I'm quite sure that she had already consented to the company that they could remove this device when they saw fit anyway, because it was part of a clinical trial. It was not a doctor saying, okay, this is a this is a treatment for your condition. Although it was, but it wasn't, it was part of a trial. It was part of an experimental process. So it was, presumably it was always going to be temporary anyway. But it doesn't, it doesn't change the impact on her life. And it doesn't change the fact that, there must be a better way to do this is really my thought. There must be a better way to handle things like this. And the reason why this implant was taken out in this particular case was because the company that made it and sponsored this clinical trial went bankrupt. So again, if the company that made the device and monitored the device was no longer going to exist, so it would no longer be able to perform maintenance or, monitor this device that had been placed in her brain. So if something did go wrong with it, there wouldn't be a place that she could go. There wouldn't be a number that she could call to have it fixed or whatever. It seems like removing it was probably the safest move, not only for the company, but also for her in the long run. But it's a terrible situation. It would be lovely if, she would have been able to work out some kind of a deal where she could have kept it, and there would have been, some other company or some other medical group could have come in and said, okay, we will take over the maintenance of this. We will now be sort of the support team for this since the original company is gone. And again, there must be a better way to do this. Maybe in the future, we can change the laws governing these kinds of clinical trials so that there will be a plan B in place. If there is a case where a device is a radical improvement in a person's life where, they would hate to lose it when the time comes that it would have to be taken out, like that, they don't need to surrender it like that, that some other entity can come in and take it over. Maybe there's some way something like that could be established in the future. But, for right now, in this particular case, it seems like removing it was probably the best thing for everybody in the long term. But I still feel horribly that this woman lost this device that seems to have given her a great deal of relief, in her condition. Andrew Michael, you love people ranting, don't you, Steve? Great. So a video game led to me eventually quitting my job. Transphobes crawling out of the woodwork, and it's all opinions and separate art and artist and just asking questions and other such bullshit. Transphobia is grounds for dismissal in the NHS. Being trans is supposedly a protected characteristic in UK law. How every single fucker in this building thinks there is a finite number of rights, and more trans rights means less for cis women. I was cautioned by my department head, jumped up little religious shit that he is, against wasting the hospital's practically endless financial resources on actually making sure there was enough information for an accurate diagnosis for one woman. I'm selling my car, moving out of my home, and taking a 70% pay cut rather than take another quid of these creatures' money. As an aside, trans people in the UK, you have more patience than I can fathom and put up with more shit than my privileged arse imagined. Well, I think you mentioned this in the chat a couple weeks ago, but all I can say is I applaud you. I'm proud of you. It takes a lot of guts to do what you did to walk away from a job and take that kind of a financial hit. And I know you're not just doing it to be noble. It does sound like there was legitimately, it was doing your head in, and it was difficult to be around these people and to put up with this bullshit. And it's not, it's not just you being the brave white knight saying, I will make a statement and I will take a stand for trans rights and I will walk away. It's also you saying, I can't fucking stand this anymore. I have to get out of here. And I'm willing to take the pay cut to do it. Either one of those, I think, is incredibly admirable and speaks to the kind of person you are. And all I can say is I'm proud of you. And I hope that you're okay from now on. I hope that going forward, you continue to find yourself in a good situation, and that your new job will be easier to stomach. Yeah, that's what I think. But good for you. Good for you, Andrew. Michael Blank, with your love of story versus canon, what do you think of the Trek crossover comics, Star Trek and Transformers, X-Men, Legion of Superheroes, etc.? Well, of the ones you've mentioned there, I think the only one I've actually read is Star Trek and Transformers, although If there's a, I didn't even know there was a Star Trek Legion of Superheroes. If there is, I will have to seek that out and read that immediately. Um, and I read Star Trek and Transformers a few years ago, and I honestly, I barely remember it. All I remember is that the art style was great because it was mimicking the animated series of both. It was like drawn in the style of both the Transformers animated series and the Star Trek animated series from the 70s. So it was, the art style was really cool. But as far as the story, I don't remember anything. Um, but the Star Trek comics crossover that I remember the most and that I think I like the best, at least from the relatively recent past, is the Star Trek Green Lantern crossovers. I thought both of those were terrific. And speaking of canon, I mean, most crossovers like that kind of officially or unofficially exist outside of the mainstream canon of the comics that are crossing over. Like the events that happen in them don't really count and aren't usually acknowledged in the mainstream comics. Um, but that is definitely the case for the Star Trek Green Lantern miniseries. There are two of them, and they're both just, they're so fucking bonkers. Um, the way they get them to cross over is the Green Lantern Corps escapes from the DC universe into the Star Trek universe, and it's specifically it was the IDW Star Trek ongoing series that was set in the Kelvin timeline universe. So it's like the Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Carl Urban version of Star Trek. And so the Green Lantern Corps crosses over into that version of the Star Trek universe because the DC universe has been destroyed and they're the only survivors. So, like, the Green Lantern Corps are the only people from the entire DC universe that survive, and they make it to the Star Trek universe, and they, you know, have adventures there. And there's like, I remember it might have been the first issue of the second one. There's a scene where like the Green Lanterns, I can't remember. I know Hal and Kyle are there, and I can't remember who else. But there are, the Green Lanterns are like, I think they're on Earth. I think they're on Earth in the Star Trek universe, and they're like walking down the street and they're just kind of talking to each other about whatever. And I had the thought as I was reading it, oh man, they're really handling the loss of their entire universe really well. Like, just, that's how you know that they're Star Trek characters, because their trauma just rolls right off their backs. Um, but yeah, I love both of those because they are so fucking bonkers. They're just, it's like the writers said, oh, it's out of continuity. None of this is going to be considered canon by anybody, so we can just go completely hog wild. Yes, that's exactly what they did. And I appreciate it for that reason. But I will have to seek out that Star Trek Legion of Superheroes one, because I don't think I've seen that one. Danny K. Hey, Steve, not sure if you're a fan, but I am a recent newcomer to the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett. I started with the first book in the series, The Color of Magic, but multiple people have told me this was a mistake. If you are a fan of the series, where would you recommend someone new to start? Thanks. Hope all is well. Well, thank you. All is well. Unfortunately, I will be no help whatsoever with this because I have not read any of the Discworld books. I have not read any Terry Pratchett novels. I know that a lot of people speak very highly of him, and Jason is actually a big fan of his and has waxed eloquently about the greatness of Terry Pratchett to me on many an occasion. I'm just not interested. I'm sure Terry Pratchett was a great guy. Like, don't get me wrong. A lot of people not only speak highly of his writing, but speak highly of him as a person. And I'm sure he was great. I don't mean to, take any of that away from him or any of his fans at all, but it just doesn't seem like interesting to me. It doesn't seem like something I'm interested in reading. So I'll probably never read it, but I hope you're enjoying it. And I hope if The Color of Magic was the wrong first book to read, that you have found other people who can recommend which one you should start with instead, which one you should have started with instead. Thomas Kent in Deep Space Nine's Emissary, Sisko spends a lot of time with the prophets explaining linear time and fails when he admits he really doesn't live in linear time. That roughly 30 minutes or so convinced me that neither do I live in linear time. Do you? Yes. And so do you. And so does Captain Sisko, actually. Remember, when he says it's not linear in Emissary, in that beautiful, heartbreaking scene where he keeps coming back to the moment of his wife's death on the Saratoga, and the prophets are there talking to him as he's reliving this horrible memory again and again, and they say, "You keep coming back here, you exist here. It's not linear," and he breaks down and says, "No, it's not linear." That's a comment on his grief. He's not saying that he literally does not exist in a state of linear time. His existence is linear, but despite the fact that it's linear, emotionally, he is always back in that moment. So it's a comment on his grief. It's a way of describing his grief in a very powerful, just gut punch of a way. Oh, you've told us that you have a linear existence. You've told us that once the past is gone, it's gone and can't be retrieved. And once a moment expires, you're in the next moment and that moment is gone. You've told us all of that. But if that's true, how come in your mind you're always right back here? You know, it's about his grief and his heartbreak and his inability to get over the loss of his wife. That's what that's about, not that he literally does not live in linear time. So he does, and I do, and so do you. It's just that sometimes if you're dealing with something that is a traumatic event in your past, something that you can't let go of, or even if it's not a traumatic event, even if it's like a good event, but your life maybe hasn't gone so well since, and you cling to that past glory. I mean, in that situation, it's the same sort of thing. It can feel like you're not living in linear time, or it can, or maybe you feel like you don't want to be living in linear time. You would like to go back to that moment in the past and have that back again. It feels like you're not in linear time, or you don't want to be, but you are. Sorry. There's really not much you can do about that. Agent Meister, who imagines all life as you know it, stopping instantaneously, and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light. Peldor Joy, Steve. I was in my back garden recently, burning some documents that were of no importance and in no way connected to legal proceedings being taken against me, when I remembered you saying that you thought Batman Begins was overrated. Granted, you may feel that way about it, but do you like it? Do you think it is a good movie in general and a good Batman movie in particular? Or does the fact that it's overrated preclude it from being either of those? Can a movie be both? Full disclosure, I love it. I always have, and it's one of my favorite movies. But I'll be the first to admit that it was eclipsed by its sequel and the recent Matt Reeves movie, which is a masterpiece. But given where the franchise had come from, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, I think you'll agree that Begins was a breath of fresh air. But I don't want you to think that I'm telling you how to think. Thanks for reading, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Well, first of all, yes, a movie can be both overrated and be a good movie. Absolutely right. There are lots of movies. I mean, you could make the argument like some of the most almost universally celebrated movies that exist. I mean, you could say, well, maybe you see The Godfather for the first time and you're like, that was a great fucking movie. Is it the greatest movie ever? No. And so to you, The Godfather would be overrated, but you're still saying that you thought it was good, maybe even great. You just don't really see the argument for greatest movie of all time, or one of the greatest movies of all time, or something like that. That's not. Now, personally, I think The Godfather is not overrated at all. I think it deserves all of that reputation and more. But that's the idea. You can appreciate a movie and like a movie, but also feel like the people who really like it are kind of going overboard. Batman Begins is definitely a big improvement on both Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. There's no question of that. Batman Begins has its moments that I think work really well, but on the whole, I find it really uneven tonally and aesthetically. I find it kind of clunky in terms of its plot, where when it's spooling out Bruce's origin story, and how he went overseas and joined the League of Shadows, and was being trained by Liam Neeson and trained by Ken Watanabe, and like that sort of the backstory portion, and then it switches gears and becomes a superhero movie. Like that transition has always bothered me. I've always felt like that's a really clunky shifting of gears and it just does not work. And actually the movie is less interesting from that point forward. It's one of those instances where once he actually becomes Batman and is in the Batman suit and doing Batman stuff, the movie becomes way less interesting to me than it was before he was Batman. And you would think, especially knowing how much I don't really like origin stories and backstories and find a lot of that unnecessary to show in the movie, like you would think my opinion would be the opposite. You think I'd be checking my watch during the, you know, the first maybe third half of the movie and be waiting for him to get back to Gotham City and get in the Batcave and get that bat suit on. But actually, it turns out, I think the first part of the movie is better than the second part. Like the actual Batman stuff kind of is just like, all right, it's fine. It's, I mean, like I say, it's better than Batman Forever. So I'll give it that. But you know, I don't like Jim Gordon basically being his little buddy. You know, it's like they wanted to have Jim Gordon in the movie. They felt like people would expect Jim Gordon to be in the movie. They cast Gary Oldman as Jim Gordon, and he does a terrific job. But like his role in the story is, hey, buddy, I need somebody to drive the Batmobile for me. Can you drive the Batmobile for me? You can be my buddy. It's just, you know, that fucking train. I hate that train. The Plot Express, I always called it in Batman Begins. The Plot Express. Everything goes all, hey, everybody, the plot, it's really simple. It all has to do with this fucking train that just so happens to go to all the important plot, all the important things that need to happen for the evil supervillain plot to be foiled. And oh yeah, it's so convenient. The water main runs underneath the train tracks and everything runs right through Wayne Tower. Isn't that convenient? Like so no, we disagree on that. We do agree that it's an improvement on Batman Forever and Batman and Batman and Robin, and we also agree that it was eclipsed by The Dark Knight for sure, and also the Batman. Those are both infinitely superior. I mean, you might not think infinitely because you like Batman Begins a lot more than I do, but both The Dark Knight and the Batman are vastly superior in every way to Batman Begins. So no, I don't really think it's, I really don't, I mean, I don't hate it. Like I can watch it. I don't think it's like, again, like I was talking about Kang earlier, like I don't think it's an embarrassment. I don't think anybody who made it has anything to feel particularly bad about, but do I think it's like that great of a movie? No, I don't, not really. And I do find it incredibly overrated. I think it's one of the most overrated superhero movies of the last 20 years or so, just because when so many people went absolutely apeshit when they saw it, and I watched it and I thought at the time, and I still think, what's the big fucking deal with this? You know, this isn't that fucking good. So anyway, but again, I'm glad you enjoy it. Brian McKinley. Hi, Steve. I've been wondering about the tendency of liberals to cast out people, especially celebrities and public figures, who come out with a more conservative opinion or two. While I understand the disappointment and that kind of reaction, it strikes me as short-sighted to attack an ally and potentially turn them into an enemy. This has happened numerous times in the last few years. What's your take? Should the left in general be less concerned with ideological purity and more focused on inclusion and persuading more conservative elements to see our point of view? Or are we better off without those people? Unrelated comment, I loved your local nutcase proposes changing the national anthem video, especially since Pressure is my favorite Billy Joel song. I posted links in a Billy Joel fan group on Facebook and it got a great reaction. Finally, a cause we can all unite behind. Amen to that. You know, honestly, it depends on what the conservative views in question are. Like, I don't know. If someone just has a little bit of like a libertarian streak to them and they're a little independent and they're not as high on like the community based stuff and the collectivist stuff that a lot of liberals and leftists propose or would like to see, like maybe there's, you know, that's not that big of a deal. I do think I'll tell you, to answer one of your specific questions, I do think we should be less concerned with ideological purity. Yes. But it depends on what beliefs we are, you know, sort of tolerating, right? Because if it's like racism, transphobia, homophobia, sexism, stuff like that, I'm sorry, I don't think we need to be making room in the tent for that kind of shit, you know? Um, but if there are more conservative or more moderate viewpoints that are not incompatible with our basic principles, then yeah, I don't think we should be like looking for reasons to kick people out. But at the same time, like when, uh, if an ally can be turned into an enemy that easily, were they really an ally to begin with? It's like a lot, and I mean a lot of this is performative on the part of people who were always just conservatives, were always just hard right wingers, and maybe they pretended to be more moderate for a while. Um, but like, oh, I was never this conservative. The liberals and the left, they made me like this. They pushed me to this, and it's like, no, dude, that's not how that works. You know, or if that is how it worked for you, then you really never had any principles to begin with. Like, are you telling me you believed deeply in liberal and progressive ideals, right? And you sincerely thought that was the way forward, and that was the way society should be built, and that's what should guide our policies and our decisions. You really believed that truly in your heart, but then you changed your mind and became a conservative because some people on the left were mean to you. Like, I don't buy that. It means either you didn't really believe all those things in the first place, or yeah, maybe you thought you did, but you didn't really think about it. You didn't really have like, it wasn't really part of who you are. It wasn't a deeply held belief, because you couldn't change a deeply held belief so easily. What? Because somebody was mean to you? You think if a trans person is rude to me, that I'm going to be against trans rights now? They go, I tried to be an ally to trans people, but one of them, was mean to me. Like, what the fuck? That makes no difference. Every trans person I ever meet could hate my fucking guts, and I would still believe in trans rights. Now, if every trans person I met hated my fucking guts, I might maybe look inward and ask myself, why do they all hate my fucking guts? Is there something I'm doing wrong? But, that would be in the real world. Hypothetically speaking, even if every single member of a marginalized group thought I was the shits, I would still believe that they deserve equal rights and fair treatment, because I think everybody deserves that. It wouldn't change my mind. Oh, fuck them. They don't like me. I don't like them either. Fuck them. Like, that's not a mature position. And if you can be moved, off of your beliefs because you don't like the way certain people on that side treat you, then those weren't really your beliefs to begin with. So I mean, I guess the answer to your question is, from my perspective, I don't really worry about it. That's not something I think is a real danger. Like, oh no, we're fucking ourselves up now because we're pushing all these people away. Like, I don't think that's that big of an issue. I think most of those people were probably never really on our side to begin with. But again, that's just me. And I'm glad you liked the national anthem video. I was very pleased with that. I was very pleased with how that came out. Duwan, I recently bought the Voyager series, and I know you've been reviewing the Borg episodes of Voyager. I know Voyager isn't your favorite series, but what would you say is your favorite episode of Voyager? From your words, it sounds like the pilot and Year of Hell, but without guessing, what would be your favorite episode of Voyager? Oh no, actually, and I'll get around to reviewing it at some point, although I'm not quite sure. I don't think it's on my schedule right now, but I'll get around to it at some point. But no, Year of Hell is one of my least favorite episodes. I am not a fan of Year of Hell at all. Year of Hell was the episode that made me want to stop watching the show back in the day when it was originally broadcast. Like, Year of Hell made me so mad at that show. I said, what is the fucking point of watching this fucking show? So definitely not Year of Hell. I do really like the pilot. I think it's one of the best pilot episodes that any Star Trek show has ever done. I think probably second only to Deep Space Nine's pilot in terms of just how good of an episode it is. So I do really like Voyager's pilot. But no, my favorite Voyager episode is The Thaw. And I reviewed it in the second batch of retro reviews. The first batch of retro reviews was the first episodes of everything. And then the second batch was my favorite episodes of all of the 6 previous era shows. And the Voyager episode was The Thaw. I think that's a fantastic episode. I really, really like that episode a lot. I think it's a really strong premise. It's well plotted. It's written in such a way that actually it doesn't lean too heavily on the characters, which is good because the characters in Voyager aren't actually that strongly drawn, and it's hard to do a Voyager episode that leans heavily on its characters because I have no idea who these fucking people are anyway. But it's a really strong, like sci-fi Twilight Zone kind of premise. Michael McKean as the clown is fantastic. It builds to this great showdown between Janeway and the clown that is carried off really nicely. It has a great ending, perfect final shot with just the clown's face fading into darkness. Just it's a really, really, really fantastic episode. So The Thaw is my favorite Voyager episode by far. Which is not to say Voyager didn't do other good episodes. There are some really, really good Voyager episodes. But to me, The Thaw is top notch, absolutely top notch. General Contact Unit problem child. At the moment, I'm cautiously optimistic about Trump losing again in 2024. One thing I keep wondering is what exactly the GOP will do afterwards if that happens. If they lose in 24, it'll be the case that Trumpism hurt them in every major election after 2016, and they only won that one because of the Electoral College. You'd think if that's the case, it would seem like the rational thing to do would be to moderate their positions somewhat, but I kind of think the party isn't capable of doing that anymore. I think the GOP's white middle-class boomer base is so radicalized at this point that they wouldn't tolerate the party returning to even like a Bush-era level of conservatism. Basically, their base isn't big enough to win with anymore, even with the US's rigged system. But if they change at all to bring in new people, they'll alienate said base. It's probably wishful thinking to say the GOP will die if they lose in 2024, but I'm having a hard time imagining what they do after that. I would suggest that you unburden yourself of that problem because it is not your problem and it is not my problem. That this is a case where it is the perfect opportunity for that wonderful turn of phrase. Hey, not my circus, not my monkeys. What happens to the Republican Party if they lose in 2024? Will they have an identity crisis? Will they collapse? Will they struggle to rebuild? Will they lose a lot of their base as they try to rebuild a new base that is less radical? Hey, not my fucking problem. I don't give a fuck. I don't care what happens to them. I hope they lose, and I hope they keep losing for a good long fucking time because fuck them. Fuck every last goddamn one of them. Fuck them. I hope their party does collapse. I hope they have ruined their fucking party. Good. They deserve it. Fuck them. Not my problem. Not my fucking problem. They have every bad thing coming to them you can possibly imagine. Fuck. I hope they lose every goddamn election for the next 50 years. Fuck them. Fucking proto-fascist, racist, homophobic, transphobic, religious, bigot, fucking zealot, reactionary, conspiracy theorist motherfuckers. Fuck them all to hell forever. Or, to put it more succinctly, no skin off my ass. I don't know if that'll actually happen or not. I don't know if they lose 2024, you know, if they lose the presidential election, if they lose seats in Congress, if that does become like a major downturn for the fortunes of the party, I don't know how catastrophic that will wind up being for them in the long run. It may lead to a major collapse for the party where it takes them a long time to build back up. It may do absolutely nothing to them. I have no idea. But either way, I don't give a shit. I'm not a Republican strategist. I'm not terribly curious about what happens to them in the future as long as they fucking lose. Fuck them. Michael Ridra turns 39 today. Well, happy birthday. Is it the first time you're turning 39? Hey, Steve, my birthday has me pretty bummed out, so I'll ask a lighter question this time. If you won $500 million after taxes, very important, what would you do with that money? What would I do if I had $500 million? Pay off all my debts, pay off all my family's debts, pay off the debts of a few select close personal friends. I don't know, probably, buy houses for a couple of people. again, people that I'm close with that I want to take care of. Make a big donation to my county's public library, make a big donation to the Barbara Ingram School for the Arts, which is the arts centered public school in Hagerstown. Um, yeah. And other than that, I mean, enjoy retirement for the next hopefully 50 or 60 years. Um, and make YouTube videos, keep making videos about stuff that I find interesting, that I want to make them about, and I won't have to worry about keeping to a schedule because I won't have to be making them to pay the bills anymore. I can actually take my time and have money to spend to make them, the way I want to make them, and bring other people in and make it more of a group effort instead of just a one-man band. And who knows, with that kind of money, shit, make a couple of movies, never mind doing YouTube videos, make, actually sit down and come up with a movie that I can make. Do artistic things, do creative things, stuff like that. Yeah. 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 You know what I would actually really like to do if I had that kind of money after, and I had enough left over that I felt like I could afford to do this after I take care of all my people and everything. Um, I would love to just go around and buy all of the other houses on my block on both sides of the street, and I would give them more than a fair price. And of course, if they didn't want to sell, they wouldn't have to. But I would give them a very generous price for their house and their property so that everybody else on my block could move out, and I could tear down all the houses and just have just my house and a nice empty block, and it would be just me and anybody I chose, to come and be my guest, right? And maybe have a guest house, maybe across the street if somebody wanted to come and hang out or whatever. But for the most part, just have a nice empty block where it's just me. Plant grass, plant trees, have a nice little woods all around, and just have a lovely little oasis in the suburbs of Hagerstown. Just a lovely little garden patch. That's what I would love. That's what I would love. Yeah. Yeah. That'd be nice. Joe McClory. I was watching an old DVD with a teaser of Man of Steel, and it made the movie seem like it was going to be about a cheesy Boy Scout Superman dealing with a cynical world that needs hope. And I was like, wow, that could be a good Superman movie. And remembered, I felt a similar kind of hope when they put out the Batman v Superman teaser about Superman being seen as a god by people, and that being a bad thing because that causes the conflict, and thought, oh, well, that is at least a good idea. Anyway, as someone who also dislikes those movies, how much do you wish the guy who took footage from them to make good Superman movie ideas instead of what we got was in charge of them instead of Snyder? Boy, I'll tell you what, I never really liked any of the trailers for Batman v Superman. Like, of course, by that time, the bloom was kind of off the rose. Like, I had seen Man of Steel and I was like, okay, I don't trust the people doing this. So the Batman v Superman project never remotely excited me at all. But that first trailer for Man of Steel is fucking beautiful. I mean, it's so good. And you're right. It looks like a Superman movie that is about hope and beauty, and like it seems lyrical and emotional, and it's like, oh man, there's some really striking visuals in it. They take some of the better shots from the movie to use in that trailer, and it just looks like a fucking poem to Superman. Like, it looks beautiful. So I thought, yeah, when I saw that first trailer, I thought, oh shit, that's going to be the movie. This is going to be great. And then that's not the movie. Like, not even close. Like, the movie is pretty much the opposite of the whole vibe of that trailer. It's not beautiful. It's not thoughtful. It's not lyrical or poetic or anything. It's big and loud and dumb and terrible, and made with someone who has the sensibility of an edgy 13-year-old who does nothing but play fucking video games all day. And, it sucks. It sucks ass. It's a shitty movie. But the trailer makes it look so beautiful. Oh, so yes, I wish very much that whoever was responsible for creating that trailer had more creative input into the actual movie. Yes. In that case, I think the person who made the trailer would have been a more trustworthy steward of the material than the actual director of the film, for sure. Shazy wannabe world savior. Would you happen to have any insight on what it would take to rein in corporations who simply circumvent regulatory attempts to make them pollute less, treat their workers well, and not monopolize their industries? My personal take is that we would need a world government, or at the very least, a treaty by which every single country on earth would have to strictly adhere to, with serious consequences otherwise. Or else corporations would just move their operations to countries with more lax or non existent regulation. Just mentioning the idea out loud feels like committing sacrilege. With all of the neoliberal and libertarian hysteria our current political discourse appears to revolve around now. What do you think? We obviously need to do something, as not reining in capitalism soon could actually result in an inhospitable world for all mankind, not to mention most, if not all, forms of life on Earth. Man, those of us who give a shit are really fighting an uphill battle, aren't we? We are, but I fear that it has always been that way. No, I agree with you. I mean, I know there's like the right wing has, and some people on the far left as well have done such a great job of demonizing the idea of, oh, world government. It's going to be world government. It's going to be the new world order. It's going to be jackboots on your neck. I mean, there are ways of envisioning a more robust form of global government without it turning into an authoritarian dictatorship. And I mean, look, something like an environmental or labor focused version of the world court, of the International Criminal Court, which now that's not a perfect solution because people need to be signatories to that. Like you need to sort of opt in. And that's, the United States is not a party to the International Criminal Court, which I think is a horrible mistake. And I think we should be. I think the United States should be signed on to all of these United Nations and international, judicial and legislative bodies. I just think if we like to, here in the US, we like to fancy ourselves as we're the world leader, we're the number one nation in the world, right? And then we don't participate in the international court, and we're not signatories to certain international treaties. We're, in some cases, we're the only major holdout. It's just, it's a shame, and it's an embarrassment, and it's a major blatant self-serving hypocrisy on the part of us and on the part of our leaders who have refused for decades to correct this mistake. But yeah, something like that I think would be necessary. Have some kind of international body where it's not necessarily, it doesn't have jurisdiction over everything. It has jurisdiction over a particular field, like business versus labor, like working conditions, like making sure that people are treated fairly and treated humanely, and that businesses are run with, according to certain standards and are financially above board and can't pull these shady things like you cite in the question where, if a business doesn't want to pay workers a particular wage, they just relocate to another country where there aren't that many regulations and they can afford to pay people pennies a day. And, like that would prevent that sort of thing. I mean, the challenge would be getting everybody to sign on to it. But I do think that is the best, maybe only way to deal with that. Absolutely. Some form of world government. Again, not a worldwide dictatorship, not something where like every sovereign nation has to give up all of its sovereignty to this, like earth, like globe wide international version of our federal government or anything like that. But just a group of internationally recognized and internationally empowered governmental bodies, the jurisdiction of which is the entire world, that has the power, and that is under the control of a representative democracy of somehow that is answerable to the will of the people in some way. That is not an absolute untouchable authority, but is a servant, as government should be. Government should be the servant of the people, not the master of the people. That is empowered to do this. I think that would be not only the best, but possibly the only solution to those kinds of problems. Manuel Paternoster. Hi, Steve. How are you? I hope everything is fine. What I wanted to ask you, with the latest release of Star Trek Resurgence and Star Trek Infinite having been announced quite recently, I was wondering if you were into gaming, and if yes, if you played Resurgence or any of the other Star Trek-related games from the past. I myself like to play video games and had a lot of fun with the older generations of games like Star Trek Armada 1 and 2 and the Star Trek Elite Force. Especially the latter adds an interesting story to Star Trek Voyager, even though it is a first-person shooter. Thanks for your answer, and thanks again for all your content. Have a nice day. Greetings, Manuel. Everything is fine with me. Thank you for asking. I hope things are good with you. No, I'm not really much of a gamer. And I don't think I have played any of the games that you mentioned here. Um, I think I mentioned a few weeks ago. It might have been on the Ensign's log live stream that I did with Dana and Jason last month. There was a game that came out a few years ago called Star Trek Bridge Crew, and I downloaded it. I bought it on Steam and downloaded it. I literally played it for 10 minutes and gave it back. Like, I returned it and got a refund. I was like, this is not for me. This was a mistake. There's nothing about this that interests me even a little. So I technically played that. A friend many years ago, a friend gave me a copy of Star Trek Bridge Commander, and I played that for a little while, but never really got super into it either. Honestly, of the Star Trek games I've played in my life, the only ones that I've played any significant amount of time are the old PC games from the 90s, Star Trek 25th Anniversary and Star Trek Judgment Rights. I played both of those quite a bit when I was a teenager, and I still own them. I have copies of them on this computer, actually, although I haven't played them for years. But I have played them occasionally in the last, several years, but it just doesn't, grab me. Like, I remember especially 25th Anniversary. I played a lot when I was a kid. And that is a really fun game. And Judgment Rights, again, it's the same kind of thing. Judgment Rights is a sequel to 25th Anniversary, so it's the same setup and everything. And I mean, they're really fun games. And it's like you're playing through a Star Trek original series episode that doesn't exist, and it's a lot of fun. It's really cool, but it's not something that I have either the time or the inclination to spend much time doing now. So, but no, I haven't played any of the games that you mentioned in the question. Isaiah Taylor. Hello, Steve. How are you doing at this moment? Just fine. Can you please send my condolences to the Harding family? I'm deeply sorry for Jason going through this difficult time. I don't remember when I began to listen to the Late Seating podcast, but I was hooked ever since. I think my favorite episode was you guys dunking on the movie Armageddon. It was a laugh a minute. You two are a power duo in a match made in heaven. Jason is, and don't take this the wrong way, the white brother I never had. Please get well soon. I wish I could have let him hear my fan-made Late Seating podcast movie reviews. I donated $10 to his GoFundMe too. Steve, how did you and Jason first meet? Well, first of all, I'm going to mention this later as well, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to mention it now. The link to Jason's GoFundMe is in the video description of this live stream that you're watching right now. So if anybody wants to donate to support Jason's GoFundMe, please do so. The link is in the description. And for those of you who don't know, Jason was diagnosed with heart failure recently. He was in the hospital for several days as they were trying to get his blood pressure down to a safe level. He has heart damage and kidney damage that are both related to his diabetes that he has lived with for many, many years. So he's dealing with some fairly serious health problems. Now, he's fine. He's out of the hospital. He's doing okay, but he has a lot of stuff on his plate. Like he needs to change his diet. He needs to change his lifestyle. He has doctor bills that he needs to pay from the hospital stay and from treatment that he has coming up. It could, the type of heart failure he has is manageable. It's not something that hopefully is going to be a cause of death anytime soon. Like he's okay. But if he wants to stay okay, he's got a long road ahead. So it is. I mean, I don't want to downplay the seriousness of the situation. It is a serious situation, but for now, and hopefully for the future, he's okay, and it's something that can be handled, right? And it's being handled. But it's a punch in the gut when you hear that when your best friend calls you and says, "Hey, I'm in the hospital," and they think I have heart failure. Like that's that's sobering to say the least. But so he needs help. He needs support. And I am so grateful to everybody who has shared that GoFundMe link, who has donated to it. The last time I checked, it was over $8,000, which is Unbelievable. $8,000 that will help Jason and his family pay for what they're going to have to pay for to help get him through this. I mean, I cannot thank you all enough who have helped with that. And please continue to do so. Like, continue to donate, continue to share it around. Because I'm not sure, like, you know how medical bills are in this fucking country. I'm sure the 8,000 will be a huge help, but I'm also sure that it will not cover 100% of it, you know, especially if this becomes the kind of, you know, chronic ongoing thing that needs to be managed on and on into the future. So, but yeah, Jason is doing, I mean, he's the brother I never had too, Isaiah. And he's the older brother I never had. I have a younger brother who I love very, very much. And you know, I don't want to like disrespect my blood brother by calling Jason the brother I never had, because I have a brother and I'm very lucky to have a brother. Um, but I'm the older brother in our family. So Jason is like the older brother I never had. And he's great. I can't say enough good things about him. He's a great guy. He's a great friend. And of course, he's a great guy to work with and to collaborate with and to be creative with. He's so goddamn funny. He's a brilliant writer. He's a brilliant comedian, and podcaster. And I mean, all those podcasts we do, like Late Seating and Ensign's Log, that's all Jason. Like, literally all I do is sit in front of this microphone and talk. Jason puts those things together. Jason edits them. Jason does everything. Those are his shows. He created them, and he is the genius behind them. So if you enjoy Late Seating or you enjoy Ensign's Log, I mean, I'm always grateful to hear people praise me for my part in it, but the person you really need to be thanking is Jason, because they're his shows. And how did we first meet? Well, Jason had a YouTube channel, technically still does have a YouTube channel, a brilliant YouTube channel, Opinionville, although he hasn't done anything new for it for a while because he's been focused on podcasts. But he was a YouTuber. I am and have been a YouTuber. We were both sort of involved in the atheist skeptic space on YouTube, and we were aware of each other and kind of had a mutual admiration society going for a while, you know, where we would watch each other's videos and we were aware of each other. And then the first time we actually did anything together was I hosted a live stream after Man of Steel came out. And it was several of us on the stream together. And after I didn't invite Jason at first, but after I announced it, Jason left a comment saying, "Oh man, I wish I could get in on this." And I said, "Consider yourself in," you know. And I invited him on, and he came on, and he was part of the panel. And it was just a bunch of us. It was 5 or 6 of us for like an hour or so, talking about Superman and talking about the movie. And you know, it was great. And we kind of hit it off from there. And then not long after that, he said, "Hey, do you want to do a movie show?" And at first it was a movie show on YouTube, and then eventually it became a podcast, but that was Late Seating. I said, "Of course, I'd love to do a movie review show with you." So we did that. And then he said, "Hey, do you want to do an improv comedy show where we play characters on Star Trek?" And I was like, "Yes." And that became the Ensign's Log. So, you know, it kind of grew from there. And over the course of that, of working together, you know, we became really close friends. So yeah, that's the story of me and Jason so far. And thank you so much for your donation and for your kind thoughts, Isaiah. That, I know it means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to Jason too. Russell, hey Steve, I left you a pretty loaded question finally on Patreon. Sorry that took forever. Also, I regret I won't be here tonight since I am covering a shift for work, but I want to get in a fun question. First off, have you seen The Twilight Zone? And if so, could I in 2 weeks ask you about a specific episode? Anyways, any chance you will be doing a review on the finales of Star Trek, meaning the 60s to the 90s and Enterprise era from best to worst? I'm sort of curious how you would rank them. Also, I would love to know your thoughts of the TOS episode, All of Our Yesterdays, which gets no review status among fans, yet it remains one of my favorites. Forget the Kirk plot. I'm talking about the Spock-Zarabeth plot. What are your thoughts? I will see this tomorrow. You all take care. See you shortly. I hope. Bye for now. Well, first of all, I love The Twilight Zone. It's one of my favorite shows ever. So, of course, please feel free to ask me anything you want about any Twilight Zone episode you want. I would love to talk about The Twilight Zone. I will be doing a review of these finales of Star Trek. Yeah, I mean, it'll probably be a while. I mean, the idea with the retro reviews is eventually, and obviously this will take a very, very, very long time. The idea is ideally I would review every episode of all the shows eventually. That may not be realistic. I don't know if I have enough time left in my life to review all of those, every single episode of every single show. But the idea is to do either to do all of them or to do as many of them as I possibly can. And I will save doing the finales for whatever the last batch is, right? Whether it's when I've reviewed all the other episodes of every show, or when I've decided, you know what, I'm done with this, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I may leave a whole bunch of episodes unreviewed, but I will at least review the last episodes of all of the 6 previous era shows. So one way or the other, I'm going to review them in the retro review series eventually. It just probably won't be for a very long time. But if you want me to rank them, All Good Things is the best by quite a ways. It's not even close. All Good Things is fantastic, is a brilliant episode. It's one of the best episodes of TNG, period. Not just a good last episode, but just a great episode. So that's first place. Second place is probably Deep Space Nine's finale, What You Leave Behind. Not nearly as good as All Good Things, but very good. And my opinion of it has improved greatly over the years. When it first aired, I didn't think it was that great, but I have come around on it to a large degree, and I now think it's a very satisfying finale to that show. After that, I mean, the last episodes of TOS and the animated series are just typical episodes. And especially like Turnabout Intruder, the last episode of TOS, is a really rotten episode, so it's got to be close to the bottom. I don't remember what the last episode of the animated series is, so I can't really place that. So I guess third place would be the last episode of Voyager, even though I don't really think that's that great of an episode. And fourth place would be the last episode of Enterprise, which is also kind of a rotten episode with a really mind-bogglingly wrong-headed premise to boot. But yeah, All Good Things is the best, like, without even thinking about it. And if I had to, and I guess Turnabout Intruder would be the worst, but you know, I would have to do some thinking on it. And I like All Our Yesterdays. I don't know if I wouldn't put All Our Yesterdays up as like one of the great episodes of the entire series. But I like it a lot. You know, I think it's an excellent episode, for sure. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. And I will be reviewing it at some point. I'm doing time travel episodes next in the next batch, and it is not in that batch. It is not among the time travel episodes I will be reviewing in the next, I think it's 6 weeks. I think it's 6 episodes is the next batch I have planned. And All Our Yesterdays is not in that batch, but I will be getting to it eventually, because I mean, I'm going to review them all eventually, fingers crossed, maybe. And, you know, I will get around to it at some point. But I like it. I think it's a good episode. Wolfie Basage, hi, Steve. A few summers back, I was strolling homewards when the word psychosomatic popped into my head. This isn't unusual, and I know it happens to different people at certain times. Anyway, about 15 minutes later, I got home, switched on the radio, and the word psychosomatic was the first thing I heard. There had been a popular song some years back, and I'd flicked on the radio at the exact time that the words occurred. In the lyrics, holy fuck buttons. I thought, I'm psychic. I have the power of gods. I am Legion. I am Oz, the great and terrible. I have to get a lottery ticket. And so after rescheduling my time to an afternoon of guessing cards pulled from a pack, news agents, and a few failed attempts at levitation, I concluded that it must have been mere coincidence, albeit of incalculable odds. So my question is, have you ever experienced a coincidence so weird that something impossible seems like the most likely explanation? Anyhow, hope all is well and good health to Jason. Thank you very much, especially for those well wishes to Jason. I don't know about incalculable odds or anything like potentially life-changing, but yes, I've had experiences many times that are similar to what you're describing. There was, and like when you say like the word psychosomatic popped in your head, there have been times in my life where it seemed like I was hearing a particular word a lot all of a sudden. About 20 years ago, it was the word inculcate. For some reason, like I heard that word somewhere, and I thought inculcate. That's a good word. You don't hear that too often. And then for the next like few months, it seemed like I was hearing and seeing that word all the time on the radio, on TV, in things I was reading, in people's conversations. I was like, inculcate. Oh, and I think what it was I just became more aware of it. It was more likely that I would notice it and note it if I heard it than I had been before. Because I had heard it that one time and I noticed it and I was like, oh, inculcate, cool word. Um, I remember when I was in high school and I got super, super into Billy Joel. And this was when Billy Joel had been kind of had like a dry spell in his recording career. He had released The River of Dreams in I think 1992, 93 maybe. And then he didn't have an album. He didn't release an album for like 3 or 4 more years after that. Actually, I don't think he ever released another full studio album, but it was about 3 or 4 years after that that he released his third volume of his greatest hits. And that was like when I was really getting into my Billy Joel fandom. And I was like, oh, what a coincidence. Billy Joel hasn't released a new record for, 3 years. And now I become a super duper Billy Joel fan. And all of a sudden, here comes a new greatest hits. Like it's that sort of thing. Um, and of course, that's a coincidence, right? Of course, that's a coincidence. But, you know, it happens and your brain kind of finds a pattern there where there isn't one. I remember there's two examples of hearing songs on the radio um, in times in my life when I felt like I really needed it. I remember when my dog died. I was on my way to the funeral home where my parents had brought my dog and they were going to have her cremated. And they wanted me to meet them there so I could sort of see her one last time before they took her in to get her cremated. And on my drive there to that meeting, I heard the Verve Pipe song "I Will Never Let You Down," which is not one of the Verve Pipe was and still is one of my favorite bands, and I was super into them in my teens and early 20s, and still love their stuff. And it was their new single. It's not one of my favorite of their songs, but it was like their new single. So it was like, oh, the new song from my favorite band just so happens to be on the radio as I'm in my grief to go mourn my dog that I've had since I was 5 years old who died. Um, and then when my grandfather died, um, I discovered the Warren Zevon song "Keep Me in Your Heart for a While," and which he recorded while he was dying. And I mean, and I still to this day love that song. But I discovered that song in my grief as my grandfather was dying and in the immediate aftermath of his death. And there's lines, and he died. He had emphysema. He had lung problems that eventually also he had kidney problems. And but his breathing, because he was a smoker. He smoked for like 30 years, and that's eventually what sort of brought him down. I mean, he lived to be 74, so he didn't have like a super super short life, but he could have lived for many more years had he been healthier. And his last few years were difficult because he was ill because he had emphysema because of his smoking. So the first line of that Warren Zevon song is "Shadows are falling and I'm running out of breath," and that immediately made me think of Pap. You know, um, and then Pap also worked on the railroad for most of his adult life. That was his job. And there's a line in the song that says, "There's a train leaving nightly called when all is said and done." So there's a train reference. And so there's a lot of stuff in the song that specifically makes me think of my grandfather. And I heard it during that period when he was going and then after he had died. So again, coincidence, right? A coincidence. But if you are of a mind to think that way, if you are given to that sort of magical thinking, you can see it's very easy to create this narrative for yourself and think, oh, that must mean something. That song was speaking to me. That was the universe reaching out to me to tell me it's okay. I don't think that's what actually happened. I don't think that sort of thing does happen. I don't think that's the way things work. But that's the way our minds work sometimes. So I have a general idea of the sort of experience you're talking about, and I have had those sorts of experiences before. Stephen G. Clenard. Hey, Steve, I've been rewatching DS9 with some friends who have never seen it before, and it's been fun watching it anew through their eyes. We recently watched Heart of Stone. I think the A story with Kira and Odo is well below average for DS9, but the B story with Nog and Cisco is great. And the scene where Nog breaks down and reveals to Cisco why he wants to join Starfleet is perhaps my favorite in all of Star Trek. Sure, it's a major retcon for Nog and especially Rom, but Aaron Rosenberg's and Avery Brooks, I think you mean Aaron Eisenberg and Avery Brooks, performances are terrific. Anyhow, do you have any instances of episodes or movies, not necessarily Star Trek, where one great scene or performance stands out above an otherwise mediocre or worse work? Oh, yes. Actually, I made a list. I made a cheat sheet for myself because there are quite a few that I thought of. In terms of performances, to me, the big one is John Marley in Love Story. John Marley plays Phil, which is Ali McGraw's character's dad in Love Story. For those of you who don't know, I think Love Story is one of the worst movies ever made. I think it's absolute garbage. I don't think there is a single truthful moment in the entire fucking movie, except for when John Marley is on screen as Phil. In a movie filled with absolutely dog shit, unconvincing performances, where there's not I mean, there are good actors in it. It's not like everybody in the movie is a bad actor, but all of the performances just scream out to me as being phony baloney bullshit. That's one of the things I dislike about the movie. Just, I don't believe a second of it. But John Marley is Phil, I believe. John Marley is Phil, I believe. He plays that character with an authenticity that is completely lacking in the rest of the movie. And his scenes are the only tolerable scenes in the entire thing. So I will say, top of my list for a good performance in a shitty movie, John Marley as Phil, Ali McGraw's character's father in Love Story. Also, every single time Ewan McGregor has played Obi-Wan Kenobi, in the prequels and in his Disney Plus series, the movie or the series around him, fucking dog shit. I think the Star Wars prequels are fucking terrible. I think the Obi-Wan show was fucking terrible and pointless, had no creative reason to exist. I am not a fan of it. But Ewan McGregor was great. Ewan McGregor, and he was great in the prequels. Ewan McGregor's performance as Obi-Wan is always fantastic. He is always the best part of those fucking things. I wish one of these days, maybe I know he still wants to play him. He would like to play Obi-Wan again in another project. I hope one of these days he gets to play Obi-Wan Kenobi in a movie or a show that is as good as his performance, because he's always good. Everything else around him is always fucking terrible, but he's always fantastic. And also Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon in Phantom Menace. Fantastic. Great performance. Lousy movie. Lousy fucking movie. Great performance. Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor in Superman 4. Now, Lex is in Superman 1 and 2, and he's great, but those are great movies. Lex is also in Superman 4, which is a terrible movie, but Gene Hackman as Lex is terrific. Has some of his best Lex moments, I think. So yeah, I think the time when he says John Cryer is in it as his nephew Lenny, and he says, Lenny, I've always thought of you as the Dutch elm disease of my family tree, and the way he just sells that line is splendid. Dennis Quaid as Doc Holliday in Wyatt Earp, an absolutely terrible movie, long, boring, self-indulgent on the part of star/director Kevin Costner, a man I am generally speaking a fan of, but he went through his director's phase in the late 80s and early 90s, and somebody really needed to rein him in and say, dude, you have to stop making these 3-hour boring as fuck movies. Please, we're begging you. So Wyatt Earp, not a good movie, but Dennis Quaid as Doc Holliday, terrific performance. This next one is one that I saw just recently, well, within the last few months, because we reviewed this movie on Late Seating. Christopher Walken in Geely. Geely is a fucking terrible movie. There's not a goddamn good thing about Geely, except there's one scene where Christopher Walken shows up. His character does not appear anywhere else in the film. His character is not even mentioned anywhere else in the film. He just pops up for one scene and does his damnedest to do something in this movie. And he is the one shining ray of light in the movie. Lawrence Luckinbill as Cybok in Star Trek V. Tom Hardy as Shinzon in Star Trek Nemesis. I mentioned that earlier because even though the character as written is terrible, Tom Hardy is doing everything he can as an actor to try and bring something to the table there. Tommy Lee Jones as Ty Cobb. Great performance. Fucking terrible movie. Great performance. And in terms of single scenes in otherwise terrible movies, like bad movies that have one great scene, I go back to The Phantom Menace and the lightsaber duel in Phantom Menace between Darth Maul and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Fantastic scene. Such a good scene. I watch that scene and I think, why can't the rest of the movie be like this? What happened? Where's this movie? Like, where's the movie that this scene belongs in? Because this scene is fantastic. It's superbly choreographed. It's superbly edited. It's tense and taut. It tells a story. There's ups and downs. There's sacrifice, heroic sacrifice. And then, the hero defeats the villain with cleverness and guile. And I mean, it's like, fuck, where's this movie? What happened to the movie that this scene belongs in? So the Duel of the Fates scene in Phantom Menace is always my go-to example of a fantastic scene in a fucking garbage movie. And finally, last question from John Burns. Why are there so many songs about rainbows? And truly, what's on the other side? Please answer scientifically. Well, the scientific answer is in the lyrics of the song itself, John. Rainbows have nothing to hide. That's why there are so many songs about rainbows. Rainbows have nothing to hide. And as we know, rainbows are visions. They're only illusions. So if you want to know what's on the other side, all you have to do is look. You just have to look and you can see. Because rainbows have nothing to hide. Hey, that's it for the patron and member questions. I'm going to turn my full attention to the live chat in just a minute. But first, before I do that, I have a Stuffy short to show everybody. This is a brand new Stuffy and Friends short. It will go up as a standalone YouTube short tomorrow on my YouTube channel, but you all get to see it tonight in full frame, in all of its glory. So please do enjoy this brand new Stuffy and Friends short.
What's up?
I saw Star Trek Deep Space Nine was trending on Twitter, and it's because a bunch of fans are like, they should give the Deep Space Nine cast a new show, just like they did for the TNG cast with Picard. Not an original thought in their heads. I swear to God, give them half a chance and Star Trek nerds will fucking ruin everything.
But aren't you a Star Trek nerd?
Yeah, but I'm one of the good ones.
What makes you one of the good ones?
What makes me one of the good ones?
Yes.
Because when I watch Star Trek, I'm more focused on, like, other nerds. The nerds I'm talking about, they're all about, like, the ships and the aliens, and whereas my interest is more centered on, like, I just think my opinions are better.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Not at all. Glad I could help. Hope you liked it. I'm rather fond of that one myself. All right, here we go. Let's spend the rest of the time hanging out with the live chat. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's good. Let's see what everybody's been talking about while I've been yapping my gums here. Kara, yeah, that was the year. Yeah, Tombstone came out, I think, like maybe a few months before Wyatt Earp. It was one of those weird things that happens occasionally where like two movies about the same thing will come out really close to each other. And that year it was Wyatt Earp. And yeah, Tombstone came out, and Tombstone is like, I mean, it's kind of corny, it's kind of cheesy. I wouldn't necessarily go to bat for it as like a good movie, but it's a hell of a lot of fun. And Kurt Russell is great in it, and Val Kilmer is great in it, and fucking, I mean, really everybody's great in it. Sam Elliott, you know, they're all fantastic. And Powers Booth, right? And who's the guy who plays Ike Clanton? He also played General Pickett in Gettysburg, and he was the Stephen Lang, and he's the bad guy in the Avatar movies too. He's a great actor, and he was in it. I mean, it's so much fun and so much better than Wyatt Earp. Jesus Christ, Wyatt Earp is such a fucking chore to sit through. And Tombstone, of all of the shortcomings you could mention about Tombstone, one of the things about Tombstone you can't say is that it's a chore to sit through. It's a lot of fun. So. Isaiah with a super chat here says, for my movie, killer moths or centipedes? Moths? Well, I mean, you seem like you're kind of attached to moths. So if moths is what you want, then I say go for it. I mean, my instinct upon reading it was to say centipedes because, I mean, killer moth is a Batman villain. So I don't know of a killer centipede. I know of a human centipede, but that's a very different thing. I mean, so I would have said centipedes, and also centipedes are more unnerving than moths. You know what I mean? I mean, I guess a killer moth would be pretty unnerving too. If you're being killed by a moth, it probably is unnerving you while it's doing it. But a centipede is like, ooh, gross. Like even non-killer centipedes are kind of creepy. Black Cover 95 says, I had something to ask this week, but I couldn't put it into words. Well, if you ever figure it out, I'll be happy to try and answer it for you. Well, thank you, Kara. I love my stuffy shorts too, actually. 255 AD says, I really enjoyed the way you responded to my question. You think I'm right that the GOP have radicalized the base to the point they can't pull back and moderate? Yeah, I think you probably are. I mean, like I said, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but the thing is, like, they have activated that, you know, bonkers section of the base that they have told all the people who have believed for all these years, you know, in the conspiracy theories and the shadowy, you know, things that we're not supposed to know and all that fucking horse shit, that they're right and we're on your side and, you know, we're with you 100% on this thing. And it's they can't really put that genie back in the bottle, you know? So, I mean, I don't think they can just pull back and moderate. I think there are probably lots of people in the party, elected officials and strategists and stuff, who would love to kind of wind the clock back to how things were before the Trump movement took over. But yeah, I don't think they can do that, at least not in the short term. Knit and Crochet Tiger says, what do you think about good old Diaper Donnie getting slapped with 7 more indictments by Jack Smith in the stolen documents case? 37 indictments in total. 37. I'm stealing that, by the way. Jeff Rauner got there before I did on Facebook. I would have gotten there eventually. But yeah, I think it's great. I think it's great. I hope he goes to prison. I'm not holding my breath, but I'm crossing my fingers. I hope he goes to prison. Oh, yes, Oasis Super Chat. Respect the legend forever, Bubba. R.I.P. the Iron Sheik. Yes, R.I.P. the Iron Sheik. Like I said on Twitter, a problematic figure. He did some shoot interviews about 10 or 15 years ago where he said some very, very ugly things that maybe he regrets saying, because I know when he said those things, he was in the midst of a pretty serious drinking and drug problem. And, you know, but that's not an excuse. I'm not trying to say he only said it. He only said it because of the drugs or whatever. So, you know, we do have to sort of acknowledge that he wasn't perfect and he said some pretty horrible things in his day. But my God, as a wrestler, as a performer, I like I said on Twitter, one of the most fearless heels ever. A guy who in the 1980s, in the midst of Reagan era America, super patriotic, rah-rah USA, would go into the ring, get on the microphone and say, Iran #1, USA, tuh, and was just as anti-American and pro-Iran in the 80s as you could possibly be, came to the ring with a flag with the fucking Ayatollah on it, like was absolutely fearless. And was such a bad motherfucker in his prime that if one of those fans had tried to fuck with him, he probably could have put him down on his way to the ring without even breaking stride. Was a terrific wrestler in his prime, was incredibly strong, was incredibly influential, worked with a lot of technical holds and a lot of suplexes, like a lot of wrestlers who came in the generation after him, like especially someone like Scott Steiner. I don't know. I mean, Scott Steiner had his own amateur wrestling background, and that's probably where he got most of his, throws and suplexes and stuff. But I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Scott Steiner was at least familiar with the Iron Sheik's work, because Sheik did a lot of the same stuff. Lots of lifts and throws and suplexes, and it all looked good. And I mean, and he was a badass in the ring. And as an interview, he was legendary. You never knew what the fuck he was going to say. He had this incredible quality of being able to sound absolutely out of his mind and just a complete over-the-top outrageous character, but also you believed that was him. Like you believed that that was real. It didn't seem like a character he was putting on. It seemed like him. So yeah, he was a legend. He was a legend, and he will be missed. John Burns with a super chat. Some say prayers for Canada because of the smoke, but I say screw them. No matter where the oil comes from, Canada or imported, still contributes. I mean, I feel bad for anybody who is affected by those fires, like in Canada or here in this country. We down here in Maryland, we've had a couple of days of heavy haze and very poor air quality, where the weather advisory was don't go outside if you don't have to. But it was nothing compared to what they dealt with further north, like in New York. I mean, I saw some of those pictures of New York City where you couldn't even see the city. Like it was a shot of New York from New Jersey looking, onto Manhattan Island, and you couldn't even see the buildings. Like it was just a cloud of orange fog. It looked horrible. So I feel terrible for people that had to go through that. And Daryl asked the same thing, the air quality. There hasn't been any discoloration in the sky. There hasn't been anything it has looked like, for a few days, it has looked like just unusually very cloudy days. That's about it. And I know, like I have stayed inside for the most part. I did take a walk the first morning, and when I came back from the walk a few hours later, I had a really bad headache, which is unusual for me. That usually doesn't happen. So I don't know if that had to do with the air quality or not, but like just being like, I never had any trouble breathing. I never had any actual physical symptoms of anything while I was out there. It seemed completely fine. And so the headache may have been a coincidence. Maybe I was dehydrated. It may have had nothing to do with the air quality, but I've heard that one of the side effects of breathing in that particular form of pollution is that it can give you a headache. So maybe it was related, maybe it wasn't. But yeah, we've just had some unusually hazy, cloudy days for the past few days. Silo 626, moths come for your face. That's pretty horrible. Okay, yeah, that is pretty horrible. Ghost Wheel says, would you give Jason mouth to mouth if it was the only way he could see season 2 of Strange New Worlds with you? Or do you think Jason would say it wasn't worth it to have your lips on his? Jason wants this. No, Jason, let me put it this way. If Jason needed mouth to mouth, and for some reason he was still able to speak, even though he also needed mouth to mouth, and I was like, let me give you mouth to mouth, man, he wouldn't be like, no, don't do that. He wants this, okay? Any excuse. He might fake it. He might fake some kind of respiratory distress just to get me to give him mouth to mouth. I'm not saying he would. I'm just saying he might. Yeah, of course I would. If it was fuck being able to see Strange New Worlds, if it was a matter of saving his life, yes, of course I would. I would rock his fucking world. See, that's problematic to equate mouth to mouth with kissing. They're not the same thing. I'm acknowledging that it is problematic what I just did, but also I don't super regret it. Sermon Geek says, so if you have 500,000 after taxes and all, you won't give money to folks in need, like your friend Jason Harding and folks in need. Or did you mention that? No, I would do that. Yeah. I mean, I was certainly Jason. Yes, I would pay off. I would pay off all of Jason's bills for the rest of his life, of course. Yeah, I would help out people, and I would hit up the charity links for sure. Of course I would. Patrick Wall has a good question. You used the term truthful earlier when referencing a movie. Can you elaborate on what that term means with regards to an actor's performance? Yeah, I'm referring to emotional truth. Does it seem real while I'm watching it? Does it seem like the character is acting in the way a human being would act in that situation? Do I see them acting? That's a phrase you hear people use a lot when they're criticizing a bad performance. They say, I can see you acting. What that means is it feels artificial. You are aware as you are watching it that you are watching an actor giving a performance. It doesn't feel real. And ideally, when you're watching an actor give a performance, whatever the medium, whether it's movies or TV or the stage or anything, while you're in that moment watching it, you shouldn't be thinking, I'm watching an actor giving a performance. You should be thinking about what the play or the show or whatever wants you to think. You should be involved in the scene emotionally. So saying that it's truthful just means it feels real. It feels right. It feels emotionally right. That's what it means. 255 AD says, should someone do a sketch about that speech where Cochran starts talking about first contact? Imagine how bizarre it would be for the Princeton kids listening to that commencement. Yeah, you know what's hilarious? Because I just reviewed that episode and I got the screen grabs of it to illustrate the review. And when you blow up the text of what is on Archer's computer, like they actually have they bothered to write like a little speech that Cochran supposedly gave to be on Archer's computer screen. They don't just fill it up with lorem ipsum or whatever. So you can read some of the speech that he supposedly gave, and like he gets right into it. And, it's literally like, congratulations, Princeton graduates, I salute you. Now, let me tell you about the time when I was flying the first warp flight and these alien cyborgs from the future came back from, like he gets right into it. Can you imagine Zephram Cochrane, the famous guy who just invented warp drive and was the first human being to make contact with an alien race, right? So that like all just happened a few years ago. And now you're graduating Princeton and this guy is giving the commencement address. And within a matter of minutes, he's talking about how there were time travelers up in his shit while he's doing the warp flight. Like, it must have been insane. Super chat from John Burns. In reviewing, will you also read the 2 books based on the Spock-Zarabeth relationship written by A.C. Crispy? And she goes into why she wrote them. No, I have no plans to do that. No. The retro reviews are just reviews of the episodes. I'm not going to be reviewing any of the ancillary material. I mean, I may do videos about Star Trek books at some point in the future, and maybe those will be books but I mean, I have no plans for that. So, I mean, it's possible. Nothing is, nothing is off the list, but no, as far as reviewing that episode, I have no plans to review those books as a part of that episode review. The Cynical Optimist. Any thoughts on the Axanar fan film at this stage? I think it had great potential, but now it seems like a supermassive black money hole to fund Alec Peters' endless lawsuits. Well, I mean, it was a money hole to fund Alec Peters something to begin with. Like, I feel like that was the whole deal from the start and that's why he got in trouble, because Paramount got wise to his game, back before in the pre-Axanar days when Paramount was still very tolerant of fan films. The rule was, hey, do whatever you want. Basically, just you can't profit from it. Like, we will allow you to use our intellectual property and to make your own little TV shows and movies out of it, but you can't profit from it. And Alec Peters was profiting from it because he wasn't just raising money to make his shows. He was raising money that he was then going to use to build an infrastructure to start a production company that he could then use to go make other stuff. And that's against the rules. Not that there were ever official rules, but that's against the understanding that Paramount had with fans that were making fan films. That represents making a profit. If you use the fundraising that you did to create your Star Trek project to then roll over and become the basis of your production company that you were going to use to keep doing stuff and making money beyond that, that's making a profit off of the Star Trek project, and you're not allowed to do that. Alec Peters tried to do that. That's why he got in trouble. That's why he fucked it all up for anybody else that was making fan films and trying to follow the rules. So fuck Alec Peters and fuck his fucking Axanar movie. The only thing I could ever say about it is from the first little trailer they did of it, or that like 15-minute prelude to Axanar thing they did, technically it looked very good. The story I could not give less of a shit about. The story, it's the kind of, Star Trek backstory, lore, fill in the blanks shit that I do not give a shit about. I don't care about what fucking Garth of Izar did before we met him in that episode when he went crazy. I don't care about the fucking first Federation Klingon War. I don't give a fuck about any of that. That's backstory. That's some shit that they made up to explain character motivations or explain where some people came from in a couple of TOS episodes. I don't fucking care. But technically it looked very good. Super chat from 255 AD. Sci-Fi Debris started reviewing retro Star Trek episodes from the old Star Trek shows in 2008. So far as I'm aware, he's still not done. Well, no, probably not. I mean, I think there are like 900 episodes between all of the different shows. So like, that's why I put in that caveat, like, until I review them all or I decide that I'm done, right? Like, if I decide that I'm done, that I just don't want to do retro reviews anymore, then before I stop, I will review all of the last episodes, so I will review the last episodes at some point in the future, but hopefully not for a while. Keith Hale, Number Wang. Hey, always love a good Mitchell and Webb reference. Pedro Noguera, besides Hammer horror movies and Japanese cinema, can you tell us what other foreign movies that you like? Any Brazilian movies on your list? Have you ever seen City of God? Yes, I love City of God. City of God is a beautiful movie. Yes, absolutely. Haven't seen a lot of Brazilian cinema, though, I'm sad to say. I like a lot of French New Wave. I like Francois Truffaut. I'm a big fan of his first movie that got any attention was The 400 Blows. That's a great movie. And Jules and Jim, which is another Truffaut movie, is one of my favorite movies ever. So I love French New Wave, and Italian neo-realist has some really good stuff too. Like the best, maybe not the best, but one of the best Jesus movies ever made. The Gospel According to St. Matthew by Pier Paolo Pasolini is a fucking beautiful movie. And The Bicycle Thieves, that's another one that's just fantastic. So yeah, some French and Italian, like European cinema from the 50s and 60s. I have not seen nearly as much of that as I would have liked to. I mean, there's still massive gaps in my viewership of that, but what I have seen of it, I have loved for many years. Yeah, Carrie, this is a good example. As far as truthfulness and performances, the difference between David Suchet's Poirot and his character and going postal. At no point do you think, hey, that's Poirot. You're completely invested in the character. Yeah, exactly. While you're watching it, you believe what you're seeing. Like your suspension of disbelief is intact fully. Knit and Crochet Tiger. Exactly. That's why it's problematic. See, it doesn't matter whether we're good looking dudes or not. I'm saving his life. And for that, he will owe me for the rest of his life. Kane 20C, deathmatch time. B.A. Baracus versus Clubber Lang. Here's the thing. I love Mr. T on the A team. I think B.A. Baracus is great, but Clubber Lang would fucking kill him. Clubber Lang would fucking murder him. Clubber Lang is you think Clubber Lang is afraid to fly on an airplane? Fuck no. Clubber Lang would fucking kill him. Again, love B.A. Baracus. Clubber Lang would kill him. Clubber Lang would murder him in 10 seconds. 255 AD says, how do you feel about regeneration retconning Q being the reason the Borg became aware of the Federation? I think I sort of touched on it in the review. I don't really care. I accept the premise of whatever the episode I'm watching is, right? Like when I watch Q Who, when I watch that episode, I watch it and assume that Q is the reason that the Borg became aware of the Federation, because in that episode, that's how it happens, right? So I don't, when I'm watching that episode now, I don't think in the back of my head, oh, but they already knew secretly because of regen. Like I don't watch it that way. I accept the premises of the episode that I'm watching. So in Q Who, Q is responsible for introducing humans to the Borg. That's the way it happens. In Regeneration, they put that little tease at the end of, oh, they sent a message, and in 200 years they'll be coming. It doesn't bother me. I don't care. I think it's a great, like I said in the review, I think it's a great episode. So, if it contradicts something if a show from 2003 contradicts a show from 1989, but they're both good episodes, I don't give a shit. Yeah, Kara, that's kind of the deal. Yeah. It's you're not supposed to profit from the Star Trek production. And yeah, if you fundraise, and as part of the fundraise, you use some of the fundraising money to buy like a whole bunch of equipment that you're then going to use to do other stuff, that's considered making a profit. And you're not allowed, you weren't allowed to do that under the understanding. Well, Donnie, I've liked a lot of fan productions. I really liked Star Trek Continues. I mean, even though it turned out Vic Mignogna was a piece of shit, which sucks. But Star Trek Continues was fantastic, was a great fan production. And Star Trek Phase 2, previously known as Star Trek New Voyages, I liked a lot of those too. The episodes of New Voyages that guest starred Walter Koenig and George Takei, I thought were both terrific. So yeah, I mean, it's not, I don't have anything against fan productions. I just thought Axanar looked technically very good, but in terms of the story it was telling, I couldn't have given less of a fuck about it. And I soured on the project ultimately because it turned out the guy behind it was an asshole who ruined Star Trek fan films for everybody else. Kirek 2011 with a super chat. Hey Steve, first off, thanks a bunch for answering that personal question. Oh, no problem. I hope it was useful to you. Second, I love the TOS episode All of Our Yesterdays, especially the part Spock, McCoy, and Zarabeth scenes. Yeah, I like that episode too. I think it's a really good episode. Ghost Wheel, what is my second favorite hat? I don't know. I have my Maryland hat that I haven't started wearing yet. So that's sort of in the on deck circle. So maybe it's that one. Keith Hale, best Jesus movie of all time, Monty Python's Life of Brian. That's up there. That's a good one. 255 AD says, how TOS did a lot of episodes where the ship would encounter a planet that's inexplicably identical to old Earth in some ways. Did holodeck eps replace those in the TNG era? I think maybe they did. I think that's a good observation, because yeah, they do sort of fill the same role where, you can do a holodeck episode that you can shoot it on like a freestanding set. You can shoot it on a back lot, on like a city street or something. And that's the sort of like think about like the Western episode in TNG, the Worf episode, A Fistful of Datas. That's a holodeck episode. If they didn't have the holodeck, that might have been a parallel Earth episode where they found, just like they did in the original Star Trek, where like what was it? Spectre, was it Spectre of the Gun? The OK Corral episode where the aliens like dropped them into a recreation of a Western town. It would have been that, But yeah, I do think you're onto something there. Holodeck episodes kind of replace those. That's true, Knit and Crochet Tiger. Clubber Lang killed Mickey with one punch. Not even a punch. He just kind of shoved him, right? Yeah. Batman couldn't kill the Penguin after all those years. Clubber Lang took him out one shot. Pedro, thank you. Says, let me recommend a few Brazilian movies. Elite Squad 1 and 2. At Midnight, I'll Take Your Soul. Bacurau, Carandiru, Central da Brazil, Deus o Diablo, na Terra de Deus. My my pronunciation is awful, but thank you very much. I will make a note of those for sure. John Burns with a super chat. World War II YouTube channel just did 24 plus hours of videos. Part 1 is 8 hours. Next 3 are 6 hours. Also divided into hour-long vids. I mean, divided into hour-long vids is fine. I don't know if I would want to watch an 8-hour-long video. I think that's a little ridiculous. Ditto for a 6-hour video. I mean, especially for you, no. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure if I would be up for watching the original 9-hour cut of Greed. And that's by Eric von Stroheim, and it's one of the greatest films of all time. And it's a lost movie. Like, the full 9-hour cut is like a lost movie. So if it were ever to be found in that form and released, that would be like a historical event. And I would want to watch it at least once, but I'd be taking breaks. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think I could go to a theater screening and sit there for 9 hours. Even if they had intermissions, it would still be like, oh, fuck, I can't do this. That's a long fucking thing to sit there and watch. John Burns with an interesting one. Pavel Chekhov versus Alan Bester. Koenig's best performance. I think Bester is his best performance. I think nothing against his work in Star Trek, nothing against Chekhov, but Bester is such a great character, and he is so good. He is so good as Bester. So I think it would have to be him. Yeah. I'll sing a little bit of another song. If anybody has any requests, I can sing a little bit before we end. But yeah, no, Fistful of Datas, not Fistful of Danas. Fistful of Danas is way more trouble than a Fistful of Datas. World War II D-Day videos. Well, at least they're focused. 255 AD says, I can't remember who suggested this, but suppose regeneration was set entirely in the Arctic, like The Thing, and the episode ended with the base getting destroyed. I mean, that would have been a very interesting departure, that's for sure. I mean, I would assume that it wouldn't feature any of the regular Enterprise characters. Or maybe you would come up with a reason why the Enterprise had returned to Earth. And they got involved in it that way. That might have worked. But yeah, I think that would have been really interesting. I mean, the episode doesn't exist, so who knows if it would have actually been any good, but I would be very intrigued by the premise. Yeah. Okay. Billy Joel. Okay. What's a Billy Joel song I could sing? Let me see. Okay. I think I got one. We didn't start the fire. No, I'll do. I'm trying to think of songs that I can sing okay a cappella. So one of my favorite Billy Joel songs is from his album Turnstiles, and it's called Summer Highland Falls. And usually when he performs it live, it's just him and the piano. So I'll do. Okay, actually, it's not that long of a song. Maybe I can do the whole thing. Okay, so we will put this once again in the you asked for it file. So you want me to sing Queen? You want me to stretch myself by singing a fucking Freddie Mercury song, one of the great voices in the history of rock and roll? I don't think so, but I appreciate your confidence in me or your cunning attempt to set me up to make a fool of myself. No, I'll do Summer Highland Falls. So, okay. And once again, you asked for it. Okay. They say that these are not the best of times, but they're the only times I've ever known. And I believe there is a time for meditation in cathedrals of our own. Now I have seen that sad surrender in my lover's eyes, and I can only stand apart and sympathize, for we are always what our situations hand us. It's either sadness or euphoria. So we'll argue and we'll compromise and realize that nothing's ever changed. For all our mutual experience, our separate conclusions are the same. Now we are forced to recognize our inhumanity. Our reason coexists with our insanity. And though we choose between reality and madness, it's either sadness or euphoria. How thoughtlessly we dissipate our energies. Perhaps we don't fulfill each other's fantasies. And as we stand upon the ledges of our lives with our respective similarities, it's either sadness or euphoria. Ta-da! There you have it. I've always liked that song. I've liked that song a lot. Anyway, it's been a this is I love this, but I also I tear my hair out at this, right? Because I did the video earlier this week, right, with where I play the guy who's like the city councilman who's like, we should change the national anthem. We should change the national anthem to Pressure by Billy Joel, right? And there were comments from people in that video that were like, he should have said to change it to the theme song from Enterprise. He should have wanted to change it to, Faith of the Heart. And like, I appreciate that. And I understand where that's coming from. But not everything's about Star Trek. Like I obviously I love Star Trek. Like I've got a fucking shelf full of Star Trek action figures, dolls, let's be honest, back there. I make Star Trek videos all the time. Star Trek has become like the biggest draw of my channel. And I love making videos about Star Trek. And I love talking about Star Trek. And I love watching Star Trek. I love Star Trek. Not everything's about Star Trek. And I put that in. I did a video a couple months ago where I make reference to that, where like I wrote a bit in the video where I make a Star Trek reference in this video that is otherwise completely nothing to do with Star Trek. And I wrote in the script of that video that I actually say, I don't like to make Star Trek references and stuff that isn't otherwise about Star Trek, because not everything's about Star Trek. But in this case, I feel one is necessary, and then I go and do the thing. But I feel like that's important to me, not just because I want to do videos about other stuff, but like there's more to life, like there's more to life. And again, coming from a lifelong fan of Star Trek, I love Star Trek. There's more to life than Star Trek. I love Batman. I love Superman. I love baseball. I love all kinds. There's more to life than all of those things. Like I don't want to just do one thing or reference one thing or make jokes about one thing or whatever. So yeah, it was never going to be Faith of the Heart. Let's be honest. It was never going to be Faith of the Heart. I actually came up with that video, that the national anthem video, where he pitches Pressure as the new national anthem. I came up with that while I was out for a walk, and because I wanted to do another funny video, and I thought, and I had done, there was a Stuffy video from years and years ago where the first scene of the Stuffy video was it was me giving a speech where I was trying to convince the others of something. And it was like this big, like high-minded, rhetorical, like passionate, persuasive speech. And I never said what I was actually talking about until the end, when it turned out I was trying to talk everybody else into watching the movie I wanted to watch. And the movie was The Avengers. Like we were having me and the other stuffed animals were having a movie night, and we were trying to pick what movie we were going to watch. And my pick was The Avengers. And I was giving this big speech to be like, this is why we should watch The Avengers, So I liked that form of giving like a big, important sounding speech that turns out to be about something that could not be less important. So I wanted to do one of those, but I thought, what could it be about? So I came up with the idea of, okay, he's a city councilman and he's kind of nutty. And what does he want? Oh, it's a city council, but he wants to change the national anthem, which is absurd just in and of itself, right? So what does he want to change the national anthem to? And I sort of went through a couple of different things in my head, and finally I just sort of landed on, oh, wouldn't it be funny if he wanted to change it to Pressure by Billy Joel? Because that's completely random. Like nobody in their right mind would ever think the national anthem should be Pressure. Like nobody would ever think that. And then I went through the lyrics and I thought, oh, there's potential here. There's things he can say about this. And it's just sort of sprouted from that. So, but the song wasn't originally always going to be Pressure. I kind of got there eventually, but it was never going to be Faith of the Heart. Kara, yes, David Bowie and Queen, Under Pressure. Yeah, that's a good song too. That was that also gave birth to one of my favorite quotes from Vanilla Ice, which was that interview he gave back, because of course he sampled Under Pressure for Ice Ice Baby. That was like the bass track of Ice Ice Baby was Under Pressure. And everybody knew it. You could hear it. Everybody knew it. But there was this period, because this was early on in the days when, people like sampling was still somewhat controversial. And people were like, are you allowed to do that? And, isn't he stealing the song and blah, blah, blah. And so Vanilla Ice actually tried to say, oh, no, it's different. It's not the same song. And there's this great moment of him in the interview where he's like, their version goes da 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 da, and our version goes da 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 da. It's that tiny little change. It's not the same. It's like, dude, what a fucking fool you are. But yeah, great song. Great song. Oh, Vertibund. Do I think Ben Sisko would like Batman? Oh, I don't know. Good question. I don't know if he would or not. We never really, that's something, as much as we learn about Sisko in the series, we never really learn a lot about like his reading habits or his entertainment tastes. I'm not sure if he would or not. Maybe. Maybe he would like Batman just so he could argue with Picard that Batman is the world's greatest detective and not Dixon Hill. Maybe he would become a Batman fan just out of spite because he would know that Picard would hate it. Because it would be like a comic book and completely unliterary. Not that Dixon Hill was a pulp character, so he wasn't super literary either. But, at least Picard could say, well, at least Dixon Hill was brought to life by the written word and prose, $255 that might have been interesting. The Enterprise regulars don't show up until the very end. I mean, like I said, it's an interesting premise. I would have been curious to see how it turns out. Okay, I'm going to wrap up the video in just a minute. So I'll answer 255 AD's last question here, and then I'll go through my ending spiel. And Geek is putting charity links and stuff in the chat, so please be mindful of those. 255 AD says, my issue with that video is I actually think most right wingers aren't that reasonable in their argumentation. Yeah, you're probably right. Although, I mean, I didn't necessarily want him to be a right winger. I mean, I think he probably is. Like, I didn't think that deeply about the character as I was writing him. He's the kind of guy who is trying to sort of appear a little moderate, because he acknowledges things like we made some mistakes, like slavery. And then he just kind of breezes on by it. Like, you don't get the impression that he really thinks all that deeply about slavery or the treatment of Native Americans or anything like that. Like, he's aware of it and he acknowledges it, but he acknowledges it in a way that will serve the argument he's making, not because he seems like he really cares about it. So, but yeah, is he, which major party is he more likely to be a member of? He's probably more likely to be a Republican than a Democrat, but for the most part, he's a guy who just doesn't think all that deeply about things and is there at the meeting to make this completely bizarre proposal. Okay, so anyway, before we wrap things up, first of all, I want to remind everybody of Jason's GoFundMe, which I mentioned earlier, but it is linked in the description to help Jason Harding cover his medical expenses arising from his heart failure and his kidney problems. If you can afford, if you have donated to Jason's GoFundMe, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And I know Jason appreciates it too. If you have shared the link, thank you so much. Geek, I know you put the link in the charity links, and I really appreciate that as well. Everybody who has contributed anything, whether it's sharing it or donating to it, I cannot thank you enough. And please, let's keep that going and continue to offer Jason some financial assistance. And in that same vein, also don't forget charitylinks.page, which has links to a lot of people who unfortunately need some help. So if you are in a position to help out, to throw a few extra bucks somebody's way, there are not just Jason, there are plenty of opportunities there to give to people in need. And I would encourage you to do that. Charitylinks.page. That's also linked in the description. And Geek has been putting up a bunch of specific links to people's fundraisers and such in the live chat as well. So please do make use of those. Don't forget, if you want to support my channel, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron, or by simply clicking the join button right here on the YouTube page and becoming a channel member. Both are excellent ways to become regular, ongoing supporters of my channel with an automatic monthly donation. Being a patron or a member at any level gets you the right to submit a question ahead of time for Ask Away. I put up a Google form that is linked to my channel members, posted to my channel members and my Patreon patrons the Monday before these Ask Away live streams on Fridays. So you can submit your questions ahead of time, and I answer those in the first part of the show. So patrons and members at all levels get to do that. So if you enjoy my work and you want to help me continue to do it, I would encourage you to consider becoming a patron or a member. And those of you who are, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. I could not do this without you. Also, don't forget that if you enjoy my YouTube stuff, you will enjoy my side projects, the Ensign's Log and Late Seating, the movie review podcast. They are part of the Let Me Listen family of podcasts that are created by the aforementioned brilliant and wonderful Jason Harding. Late Seating is our movie review podcast. Our new episode of Late Seating is up this week, and it is our review of Spy Kids, which I thought was okay. Jason didn't so much, but you can hear our specific thoughts as you listen to the episode. And also the Ensign's Log, the Star Trek themed comedy podcast that has been on a slightly longer than planned hiatus because of Jason's problems, and also because Dana has been incredibly busy lately. So we haven't recorded the first episode of season 6 yet, but probably not this coming weekend, but next weekend we will be recording the first episode of season 6 of the Ensign's Log. So the Ensign's Log is coming back, just not quite yet, but very, very soon. And we're excited for that, to be able to get back into the saddle with the Ensign's Log. If you enjoy my Star Trek videos, if you enjoy my more humorous Star Trek videos. I think you'll really enjoy the Ensign's Log. It is a Star Trek themed comedy podcast where myself, Jason Harding, and Dana Cole play characters that exist within the Star Trek universe, and we are sort of off having our own adventures while the events of, at this point, Star Trek TNG are kind of happening in the background of our lives. And it's a really fun show. We enjoy doing it. We can't wait to get back to doing it. So if you have not given it a listen yet, this is the perfect time to catch up while we're still in the midst of a hiatus. And if you have been listening, thank you so much. And I hope you have enjoyed the show. And I hope you have enjoyed this show. Let me take one last look at the live chat. Pedro, I will definitely let you know if I watch any of those movies you suggested. I appreciate those. Thank you, Kara. It's been great fun for me too. Thank you, Keith. I think it's been a good stream. And yeah, I think that's it. Thanks everybody for watching. Have a good night. Have a good weekend. And I will see. Actually, Dana and I will be back with Trek Reluctantly next week. We missed Trek Reluctantly again this week, but next week we'll be back on as scheduled. So we will see you for that on Wednesday. And yeah, have a good night. Have a good weekend. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.